So we're not trying to get rid of the thoughts. That's impossible. We can't stop the mind from producing thoughts. That would be like asking our mouth to stop producing saliva. It just does that. But the thoughts can have a certain momentum that can be very gripping. And there's other moments where they're just kind of loosely in the background and passing by. So the inquiry is, how can we move from that place where the thoughts are gripping or they're just drifting in the background? And that movement, to a certain degree, to a very small degree, is what we do with our attention. To a certain degree, we can choose whether to engage with the thinking or not. But the thinking is not going to go away. Now, this agency around having choice really depends on our state. Our nervous system goes through a spectrum of different states, from being underactivated to being hyperactivated. And depending where it is on that spectrum, we have different amounts of availability of consciousness, as well as agency as to how to direct our attention. And so it's actually a very good question. How do I contend with thoughts? And it's also a very complicated question, because that state of the nervous system, or the availability of conscious awareness, or access to having will over what we do with our attention, is the result of many different conditions coming together to create that moment. So from a long view, if I want to have more consciousness and more agency, I have to be able to modulate my nervous system. And a big part of that has to do with lifestyle. If I have a lifestyle that is conducive to having a regulated nervous system, meaning a nervous system that can receive and fully digest information and be open and receptive to more, then there is more availability of consciousness, of choice. But if my nervous system is overwhelmed by my lifestyle, meaning it's receiving too much stimulus, it's not able to digest it, it's backlogged, and it's in an emergency state, it's unable to offer up full conscious awareness so that I can actually have choice about where my attention goes and what to do about the situation. It's the fight or flight system that has taken over. There's very little me available in that moment. So what we're doing actually is we are just being receptive to however our nervous system is in the moment in meditation. We're not trying to make it go in a particular way. We're just bringing as much awareness that's available to study this oscillation that we go into, in and out of consciousness, in and out of having choice, in and out of the gripping thinking where I am completely pulled into the story, and I have no agency, to having more spaciousness and being able to see it as just thoughts. So when we sit in meditation, we just create an opportunity to observe this phenomenon and to learn. And a part of this learning is not just a cognitive exercise, it's really a feeling heart exercise. Because what we learn about is we learn about our innocence. We learn that we're actually just here for the ride, and that there's a larger force that's driving a lot of our behaviors that are not stemming from conscious choice. We learn to be humble, to experience what it's like to be with our experiences and not have a whole lot of say on the outcome. We learn compassion as to how sensitive we actually are and how much information the body picks up. And the beauty of it always wanting to protect us, and how quickly it can come up with defense mechanisms to ensure our safety. And we also learn that some of those defense mechanisms actually are automated and mechanical, and sometimes are not in alignment with how we want to do things. So we also learn about self-compassion, that we are doing the best that we can, and yet we are contending with decades of habit or our evolutionary inheritance of a system that might be a little outdated for our modern lifestyle. It's a long-winded answer to the question, what do I do about the thinking? How can I make that stop? And my recommendation is, can we include it instead of rejecting it? Can we be with it with interest and curiosity? Oh my God, I'm doing that thinking thing again. Wow, it's really strong. It's really got me. It won't stop. It keeps saying the same thing over and over. I wonder what it wants me to know. What's underneath the thinking? Am I missing something here? What actually matters underneath all of this? Thinking has a function. It just might not be the function that we can understand. Can we learn to read through its symbolisms of concepts and ideas? This language that we've been taking literally, what if it's poetry instead? What if it's our body's way of trying to tell us something really important? And we're lost in the literal meaning of the words. And we're missing the feeling tones. We're missing the beauty that actually is underneath. How we relate to our thinking is really important. Can we relate to it with tenderness and care as a beautiful part of ourselves versus the blame or the shame that there's this thing that keeps gripping me and it's a problem, or I can't stop thinking there's a problem with me, or it should be different. So how to be with thinking? It's just this thing that happens. It's not a problem. This thing could be a doorway into something else that's happening. But it's a part of me. It's an important part of me. And where there is agency is how I relate to it. That I can choose. And that choice is actually made as a result of direct experiencing of the thinking and getting to know it, in becoming intimate with it. Not as an exercise of will over trying to control or trying to make it into a particular thing, but really as an act of curiosity and interest and acceptance and allowing. So enjoy the thinking and the doorway it might open up into your sense of reality. That in order to watch something, we need to have stability of mind. We need to have, let me rephrase that, stability of the attention. And if the tension keeps getting grabbed by all of these different things, there's no ability to watch what's happening. And so having something to pay attention to as an anchor, or I call it the viewing platform, is to be up here and watching everything going on there, that is grounded in experiencing, that is grounded into sensing or feeling. That's what we're experiencing. That can be really a nice way of holding our attention in place so that we can watch what's happening. And the beautiful thing is when we get to the point of realizing that, as you said, it's natural. It's natural to get interested. It's natural to get closer. It's natural that as we get closer, everything behind us is out of focus, and now we're grabbed by that thought. And it takes us somewhere. And we go with it. And at some point, maybe we notice something and we're able to zoom out, and then we remember, oh, right, the anchor or the viewing platform, the sensory. Let me go back to that. And then it happens again. That movement back and forth into and out of freedom or agency or becoming separate as a witness, disidentified from what's happening, no longer enmeshed, but present to see. We come in and out of that. And to be able to experience that as true dissolves the expectation that we have that it's actually our fault or our choice. And without that judgment, we're actually able to be more receptive to the being gripped and to becoming curious about that process instead of judging or blaming or punishing ourselves that, oh gosh, I got gripped again and I got lost. The attitude that we have is an important aspect of seeing. Because if I already have a certain expectation that it should be a particular way, like I should be able to be completely in control of my thinking, whether I engage or not, what it does is it narrows our view of what actually is true. So by not having judgment and becoming curious, the possibilities for seeing what's true is much larger and is unbiased. So what we do end up observing is closer to what actually is true or happening than if we were to come in with judgment and expectation that it should be a particular way, or that I should be a particular way. It's a really good point. Thank you for bringing that up. And love that you've reached that point. Took me, I think, at least 2 to 3 years to get to that point. Everything serves, right? No matter how we do it, no matter how the meditation goes, we have awareness, we learn. If I get lost in my thoughts, I learn what that's like. When I wake up, I learn what that's like. Actually, it is the most foundational process of our existence. We are constantly losing consciousness and then waking up. It's fascinating. This movement back and forth. I mean, imagine this. At night, you go to sleep and you lose your consciousness. And then the next morning, at some point, you wake up. Isn't that fascinating, that movement back and forth? Where do you go? What happens? When did that happen? At what exact moment did I go into unconsciousness? And this happens also on a micro level with our attention during the day. Right? There's a moment where I can see that I'm walking down the street, I'm noticing the smell and the breeze. And then there's another moment that I'm just like, I don't remember, it's a blackout. I don't even know how I didn't fall on my face. Something else is operating and my attention is captivated somewhere else, oftentimes on what I'm going to do later or rehashing something that happened. Right? We have this ability to be in different realities. Some of them we remember, some of them we don't. Some of them we know that we're in, and some of them, like, it's so wispy, the awareness that's available. So this is our capacity. It's very intriguing. So that could be like a fun practice for the week, is just noticing what happens to your awareness. Like, when does the unconsciousness happen and when do you wake up? I mean, just noticing that back and forth, as you're going through the day. And getting curious about it. Like, what are the conditions for unconsciousness? What leads to waking up? Are there times of the day where the losing consciousness happens more frequently? Or are there certain circumstances in which I can lose consciousness very quickly? What are the conditions for presence? when I lose consciousness, what is happening in that moment? When I'm feeling connected to my direct experience, what are the conditions for that moment? Do you have a preference over unconscious or present? If you have a preference, do you want to orient towards one of the two? By understanding what the conditions are, it facilitates your ability to orient towards those states. So you can think of it as a self-study. So make the time to study it and see what you find out. Whether that's in formal practice by sitting every day and watching this movement, or whether it's informal where you're just kind of tracking how things are going in your day and you just have this motif or theme that you're exploring for the week, which is the coming in and out of consciousness. It'd be fascinating.